Hello, my name is Mrs. Lara Fields, and today we are going to be classifying organisms using something called a dichotomous key. If you do not have access to one of these dichotomous keys, make sure to check out the link in the description to get access to a PDF version of this. This is very important to have access to this, and I would highly encourage having access to it prior to watching the rest of this video so you can follow along and get a better understanding of how to classify organisms with this key. So before we start, just understanding the importance of classifying organisms. Why are you learning this? So classifying organisms, it just helps give us a better idea of how organisms have evolved over time. So understanding how organisms vary in their characteristics, physical characteristics, is very important to understanding how these organisms develop over time. So the dichotomous key, it is one of those more early ways to classify organisms, but it is important to understand that nowadays, the more efficient way to understand the evolutionary relationship between organisms is through DNA analysis. But without further ado, we can continue and start with our very first organism, number one. So here we have an organism, and the key to using these dichotomous keys is to start at the very beginning. So we'll see at the top of the description, it starts with number one, and it gives you the option between two of the characteristics. So number 1A is with wings, and 1B is without wings. So if we were to quickly look at our organism here, we will see that obviously it has wings. So what you want to do to continue with the dichotomous key is go under the column that says refer to, and then see where is the next part of our key that you're going to go to. So with wings, it tells us to refer to section number 2. So if we go down to section number 2, it specifies even further. It will say with a single pair of wings or with 2 pairs of wings. So this organism here, we'll see it does have just 1 pair of wings. So if we go to the refer to section, that will just simply tell us that it is a fly. So it can be as simple as that, but we will do a few more examples to show how complex the key can get. But it also shows, right, the dichotomous key. Although it is a tool that can be used to classify organisms, there can be issues involved with, basing evolutionary relationships simply on observable traits. So just keep that in mind. While the dichotomous key, it is a way to classify organisms. It's not the most efficient way. Okay, so moving on to number 2 here. Again, like with organism number 1, this organism does have wings. So in section 1, we would do with wings, move on to section 2, and we'll see that we have the option between a single pair of wings or 2 wings. Organism number 2 clearly has 2 pairs of wings here. So we will move on to the section that it tells us to. So in 2B, with 2 pairs of wings, it tells us refer to section number 3. Section number 3, now we have the option of wings, hairy or scaled covered, often with complex or colorful markings. We'll look and obviously observe that there's nothing colorful about these wings. So it's going to more than likely be 3B, which does seem to be the case here. Wings not hairy or scaled. It's not hairy. It's not necessarily scaled. So this would then lead us to go to section number 5. So section number 5 is going to be the difference in the thickness of the wings, essentially. So 5A, we have the option of wings membranous, or not hard or leathery, which is what we see here. So these wings on this organism, number 2, they're not thick, they're very thin. So we would go with 5A. And what 5A leads us to is now section 6. Section 6, now we're looking at the pattern of the wings. So there's the option of 6A, wings net veined with many minute cross veins giving them a net-like appearance, versus wing venation not net-like. Getting a closer look at these wings, try to give you a nice close-up there. You can see if we were to describe the pattern of these wings, it is very net-like. So we will go with 6A. 6A takes us to section number 7. Section number 7 is then the option between the shape of the wings, where 7A is wings usually long, narrow, nearly equal in size. 7B, wings usually triangular, 4 wings larger. With these, I would say they are very much long, fairly narrow, and both pairs of wings are equal in size. So my observations would lead me to pick 7A, which leads me to section 8. Section 8, here, if you are looking at the key with me, you'll see that we will eventually lead to one of two organisms, the dragonfly and damselflies or the lacewing and dobson flies. So this is where it's getting highly specific, and with dichotomous keys, the farther down you go, generally the more specific the details will be. So with 8A, wings usually held straight from the body when at rest, strong flyers, predaceous insects with prominent eyes and bristle-like antennae. Number 8B, wings folded over the body when at rest, weak flyers with prominent antennae. So these wings are clearly not being held at the side. If they were, they would be a little farther back. But in this case, they are straight out. So this would lead us to pick 8A, which would be dragonfly and damselflies. So organism number 2, we can verify with the most evidence possible that it is indeed a dragonfly or damselfly. It is worth pointing as well that some of these descriptions will require you to do a little bit of research, as it does say in the description of your assignment. So that includes, understanding, are they prominent flyers, understanding their metamorphosis cycle as well. So just keep that in mind when you're doing these. Okay, so we'll do 2 more examples. I have organism number 3 here. So try to do this one a little quicker here. So organism 3 does have wings, so we'll go to number 2. Section 2, organism, if we were to, let me see if I can pull this back without messing up this little guy's wings. Oh geez, it's a very hard shell, but you may have to trust me on this. If I were to pull this back, I don't want to damage him. Okay, I broke his head off. Rip. There are 2 pairs of wings in this organism. Okay, so 2 pairs of wings. So that will take us to number 3. Number 3, the wings are not hairy or scaled. You'll notice if I turn the organism around, there we go. It's a very hard shell, very smooth, no hair in sight. So that would take us to 3B, which takes us to number 5, which is looking at the forewings. Are they hard or leathery, or are they membranous? These ones right here are very much hard and leathery. You cannot see through them at all. So we would say in this situation that they are 5B, which takes us to number 13. So number 13, now we have looking at the forewings. So the forewings are the wings that are in the front. So we have the option between forewings are uniform versus forewings are not uniform. Looking at these, the forewings, or the size of the forewing in relation to the anterior or the posterior, they are fairly equal. There is another description to go off of. So 13A also says entirely leathery or entirely hard or sheath-like, which should make it very, very clear that is what this organism is. Again, it's very hard, to an extent leathery. So we would go to with 13A, which takes us to number 14. 14, we have the options between forewings being much reduced in size versus forewings not reduced in size or no prominent cerci. So that's CERCI. What those are they're like little pincer appendages that you usually see on the backside of insects. So we would see essentially two pincers coming out of this if that were the case. So we would see two pincers coming out on the backside, which is obviously not apparent. So that would take us to number 14B, which would take us to 15. And then number 15, again, if you are following along, you'll see that this will lead us to two options, grasshoppers and mantids versus beetles. So with number 15A, it says forewings long, straight, and leathery, versus 15B, forewings thick and leathery or hard and shell-like, rarely long and straight. So there are other descriptions relating to metamorphosis. So if the first description is not clear, you may have to do research depending on the insect that you choose to observe. But in this case here, clearly these wings are not long. They are very much short and again, very thick, technically leathery in a sense. So we would say that they are 15B, which takes us to beetles, which that I would agree is a beetle. Okay, so now for our very last one, we have organism number 4. So organism number 4 here, got nice juicy guy, couple pairs of wings. So using the top of the chart, we will say it has with wings, go to 2. We will select 2B with 2 pairs of wings because it does have, it may look like one pair of wings, but if you were to pull this back a little bit, you'll see the other pair of wings right below it. They just are very close together, so you get a nice little close up. Okay. Well, you can kind of see the separation of the two a little bit. Oh, yeah. There you go. Okay. There's a wing right underneath. So 2 pairs of wings goes to number 3. These wings here, again, they're not hairy or scaled. So in section 3, we would select 3B, which takes us to number 5. Number 5, in this case, the wings are membranous, not hard or leathery, very, very membranous in this sense. So we would pick number 6. So 6A, it says wings net veined versus wing venation not net-like. So you'll kind of notice the difference between the net-like wings of our previous organism. These ones are a little bit more, I would say, striated, close to being net-like, but I would not consider it net-like. So that would then take us to 6B, wings venation not net-like, which is number 9. So this leads us to the option between wings very long and narrow and fringed versus wings not very long and narrow and fringed. This organism, while they are a little long, I would not describe them as being narrow. But again, that's the issue with these dichotomous keys. Sometimes is, based off observable traits, sometimes we can observe certain traits different than others. Okay, so I'm going to go with wings not very long and narrow and not fringed, which will take us to number 10. Number 10, wings equal in size, small social insects living in large colonies versus wings not equal in size, forewings usually longer. So again, if I were to pull back one of these wings, you'll see there's a very tiny wing underneath. Very tiny wing. So the wings in here are not equal in size at all. The wing that's over top is a lot longer. Okay, so if we go back to the key, we will be selecting 10B, wings not equal in size, forewings are usually larger. So that will take us to number 11, where now we're going to be looking at the mouth parts. So chewing mouth parts versus sucking mouth parts. So again, kind of difficult, and you may need extra research. Let me see if I can get this on the side. There we go. So this organism here, if you were to take a look at the mouth parts, these organisms, it's kind of hard to tell, but it is like a more of a sucking mouth part, and the wings are held roof-like over the body, which is another characteristic that is included in section number 11. So in this case here, we would be selecting 11B, which would take us to cicadas and aphids. So this is just a small example of how to go about getting the descriptions of organisms and using those descriptions to help you classify the organisms themselves. So you will need to do this with 6 more organisms, but again, make sure you start from the beginning of the key and then just work little by little with your observable traits to the point until you get to an actual species name. Okay, but that is it for me. Thank you.